Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're diving into one of the most foundational stories ever told, but we're looking at it through a really specific lens. Not just what happened, but the intense psychology behind the choices that were made.
Okay, so let's jump right in. We're not starting at the beginning of the temptation. We're dropping in right at that critical moment after Eve has already eaten the forbidden fruit. The die is cast, and now we get to watch the dominoes start to fall.
So, picture the scene. Eve walks up to Adam, fruit in hand. And just like that, he's faced with this absolutely impossible choice. Does he obey a direct command from God, or does he stick with his partner, the only other person in his world?
I mean, this is the question Adam is staring down, isn't it? He sees his wife, a gift from God, by the way, and she's asking him to break the one rule he was given. It's like he's standing on a fault line between two worlds, and he has to choose which way to fall.
And this is where the conflict gets really interesting. On one hand, you have God's commandment. It's crystal clear, simple. Don't eat from that tree. But on the other hand, Eve makes a pretty compelling case. She's not just saying, try this. She's talking about gaining knowledge, about becoming mortal, and crucially, about making sure they're not separated from each other.
Now, this brings us to what might be the most critical point in this whole interpretation. The focus shifts a little bit. It's less about Eve's action and way more about Adam's reaction. Because, as we'll see, they're viewed as two very, very different things.
The source text really draws a sharp line in the sand here. It frames Eve's act not as some kind of malicious plot, but as something born out of curiosity. She was deceived, tricked, beguiled.
But Adam, well, that's a whole different ballgame. The text is incredibly clear on this point. He was not deceived. He knew the stakes. According to this view, he took that fruit and ate it with his eyes wide open, fully understanding the catastrophic consequences. It was a conscious, deliberate choice.
And you can see this theological idea echoed later. The Apostle Paul, for instance, really hammers this point home. His words are often used to argue that Adam's action was fundamentally different because he acted with full knowledge. He wasn't under some spell of deception.
All right, so the choice has been made. What happens next? The consequences aren't delayed, they're immediate. And it's not just a change in their location, it's a profound change in their very nature, their whole perception of the world. It all happens in an instant.
And just look at how fast everything unravels here. It's a cascade. One second their eyes are opened, the next they're hit with this overwhelming sense of shame about being naked. So they scramble to cover themselves. And then they hear God's voice. And for the first time ever, instead of running to him, they run from him. They hide.
When God calls out, Adam's reply is just so honest, almost like a little kid who's been caught. He doesn't try to be clever or make excuses. He just blurts out the raw truth. And in that moment, he gives a name to this brand new, all-consuming emotion that's now running his life: fear.
So the fall is complete. Fear is now in the driver's seat. And what usually comes along for the ride with fear? Well, that powerful, deeply human instinct for self-preservation, which often looks a whole lot like finding someone else to blame. The Lord's question is about as direct as it gets. It's a straight shot, a perfect opportunity for a simple confession, for taking responsibility. But that's not what happens, is it?
Instead of a simple yes, Adam goes into full-on defense mode. He deflects, and notice how he does it. He doesn't just point the finger at Eve. He says, "The woman you gave me." Wow, so in one breath, he blames Eve and sort of blames God too?
So, the spotlight immediately swings over to Eve. God gives her the exact same chance for a straight answer. What did you do?
And, no surprise here, she passes the buck right down the line. The serpent tricked me. The blame game continues. It's a chain reaction of avoiding responsibility, and it sets a pattern that, let's be honest, humanity has gotten pretty good at repeating.
God doesn't waste any time. He turns directly to the serpent, the source of the deception, and pronounces the first curse. It's swift, it's final, and it's a pretty dark preview of the judgments that are about to fall on the man and the woman.
So what you have here is this incredibly powerful psychological portrait of how fear and shame can lead directly to self-preservation. And it leaves us with a question that echoes right out of that garden into our own lives. When we're faced with the consequences of our own actions, what's our first move? Do we seek out the truth, or do we just look for someone to blame?